Welcome to the Windows Computer and Technology channel, and one of the next operating system on the list after Windows XP is Windows Vista. And I'll give my tech guy viewpoint on Windows Vista because my tech guy viewpoint on Windows Vista differs from the user viewpoint in certain ways, although there's also some things that of course are a little annoying. But here's the thing. First of all, Windows XP was in the general, couple of years between Windows. That was pretty much the thing. If you had a Windows, 2 years later there'll be a new version. And that was what brought Windows 95 and 98 Millennium XP. They were all within the 2 to 3 year range. But something happened after Windows XP. The Windows team started actually looking at something called Longhorn. And what was apparent after a couple of years is that they were just going nowhere. There was no direction. They had lost their sense of direction, actually. And it became clear that they had to start over. And after 3 years of going nowhere, they scratched everything. And they scrapped everything, and they started from scratch. And it became Windows Vista. But the pressure was on because Microsoft had never had such a long delay between operating systems. It was trying to actually maximize the Windows XP experience. But in times, because those times were pretty much the way it was working, manufacturers were relying on Microsoft to have a new Windows because they knew they would make more PC sales. And for a long time, that was the case. Remember that the majority of people getting new versions of Windows get it through a new computer, not through an upgrade. And so, of course, manufacturers wanted to have something, and Microsoft came with Windows Vista. Windows Vista is not loved. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people didn't enjoy Windows Vista. And of course, one of the major problems with Windows Vista lies on something that Microsoft just didn't think about well. So, first of all, it was slow on many, many machines. And the reason it was slow is that as a tech guy, I've seen this. A lot of computers sold with Vista did not have enough RAM memory to run it well. So I saw a lot of clients call me because of slow PCs. And you'd go there and they'd have 512 megabytes or 1 gigabyte. And that was truly not enough for Windows Vista. It was much heavier. It needed more RAM, more space to breathe to work well. And a lot of the bad experiences that people first had was, well, I bought a PC which wasn't very expensive, so it has minimum requirements. Doesn't run well. It runs slow. Windows Vista is a bad system. And so if we look at the minimum requirements that Microsoft gave for Vista, a processor of 800 megahertz, recommended 1 gigahertz. I remember I ran Vista on my Pentium 4, 3 gigahertz at the time. No. I got a new PC. That's true. When Vista came out, I got a Toshiba laptop. That was a computer that had Vista pre-installed on it. That laptop came stock with 2 gigabytes of RAM. So it wasn't running too bad, actually. But I remember that it didn't take long that I actually put 4 gigabytes of RAM in that laptop at some point to make sure that it ran at the maximum speed. So, minimum required memory, 512 megabytes. Forget it. That didn't run really. 1 gigabyte, yeah, much better at 2 at least. Graphics card, at least a Super VGA, but if he had a Windows driver, WDDM1 compliant, 32 bits per pixel, DirectX 9 support, and Pixel Shader 2 support, The reason for that in the recommended, of course, the aeroglass effect, the famous transparencies that they actually added to Windows Vista at some point. It needed a graphics adapter capable of doing more than just the basic VGA functionalities. If you actually wanted the aeroglass effect and all of Windows Vista's graphical user interface effects to work, 128 megabyte of RAM on the graphics adapter. You needed at least 20 gigabytes of space on the hard drive, and 40 gigabytes was better. The free hard drive space for install was 15 gigabytes. CD-ROM drive. And if you had a more advanced version, because they had a lot of versions for this one, way too many. That was when Microsoft went crazy with the different versions. From the home version to the premium version to the ultimate version to the business version. It just couldn't stop. And that was one of the big mistakes of Microsoft. And it still is today. Too many different versions. You don't need that. Windows XP had 2. That was fine, and that should have stayed like that. But if you had a premium or ultimate version, you had some capabilities that were not on the standard PCs. In Windows XP, they created a Windows XP called the Windows XP Media Center. And it was the first version of Windows that was kind of centered around the fact that maybe our lives are going to be revolving around the television and computers and our TVs and our smart TVs and so on. Well, we didn't really talk about smart TVs yet back then. What happened with the Premium and Ultimate, and I had that for a while on my desktop, my Pentium 4 desktop, I had a TV tuner card, because I do some acquisition and I wanted to transfer my VHS tapes into digital format. You had a media center that was actually loved. A lot of people loved the Windows Media Center. And actually Windows 7 also had it. And that's something that actually was a positive point here. Now, as a tech guy, the negatives for Windows Vista was most PCs sold had just minimum requirement, which was crazy. You didn't want that. And of course, people didn't like Vista because of that feature. We got reason. One of the things that I did, and it was my standard thing to do, because as a tech guy, people are always kind of thinking the tech guy might be trying to screw you with extra stuff. It's like a car mechanic. And so I would actually demonstrate. So what happened is they would have 512 megabytes of RAM, and I'd say, well, I can add 1 gigabyte. And they would be like, well, is it going to really be faster? So I would take a 1 gigabyte RAM that I had, I would actually insert it on their PC, turn on the PC, told them, use your PC for 10 minutes. And then it'd come back, say, wow, it's so much faster. Yeah, because it needs a lot more RAM to work well. That was my standard procedure for a long time. Just show them how extra RAM makes this system actually a workable system. There were some things that were dreadfully slow. Windows updates were, for some reason, extremely long to install. That was a bad side of it. Restarts and even sometimes the startup would be extremely long before you actually had your desktop. Some of it was due to lack of RAM, but there were many other things going bad with there. It was very stable, though. The blue screens and the crashes in Vista weren't that frequent. It was actually quite stable. It's just that it had these little glitches here and there. Add the fact that people had a lot of minimum requirement machines rather than machines that are powerful. It added to the effect that people hated Vista. People also hated Vista for compatibility issues. It did changed some of the things enough in that even Windows XP software didn't run right on Windows Vista, and that actually continued to Windows 7 because a lot of people jumped over. And honestly, and we'll talk about it in Windows 7, but Windows 7 is Windows Vista. People just don't realize it. Windows 7 is Windows Vista. It's just that it's Windows Vista tweaked, and a few things have been changed in it. But one of the interesting things that I had seen is Microsoft, seeing that there's bad reputation of Vista, actually went to a point where they did a focus group, and they asked the group, what do you think of this new system? The only thing they did was remove the arrow glass effect, change the colors, and have people use the system. And they said, this is our new Windows. And everybody was like, oh, this is so much better than Vista. And the thing is that it was Vista. They had simply changed things around a little bit. So a lot of the hate went from mostly minimum required machines. Vista was not that bad in reality, and it actually became much better when it got its service back. They had, at that moment, fixed a lot of the things that were a problem. Some of the things that you could see on Windows Vista first was, of course, the arrow glass effect. I enjoyed that as a tech enthusiast. I found that it was kind of cute to see all these arrow glass effects and transparencies and all of that. The Windows Shell also, a new range of optimizations and navigation capabilities, including a task pane in the Windows Explorer. There's a lot of little things that were different in the Windows Vista operating system that were kind of cool. The new search pane and all of that, kind of a precursor to what was today's search everywhere within Windows. That comes a lot from Windows Vista itself. There's a sidebar. If you guys remember, there was a sidebar that was anchored with gadgets, which quickly removed itself because it became a security nightmare. But you could have desktop gadgets that you could place, and I remember having the weather there, for example, and stuff like that. It came with Internet Explorer 7, one of the worst Internet Explorer versions. Until version 6, Internet Explorer was okay. Internet Explorer 7 was dreadfully slow, was dreadfully bad, and it showed when you were navigating. And, that's when I think a lot of people started looking at Google Chrome and at other browsers that would slowly take over the web. Windows Media Player 11 was part of the experience, of course, as they were moving ahead. Windows Defender made its first time appearance as a onboard antivirus, and the problem was that when that happened, some manufacturers of antivirus software actually sued Microsoft, saying this isn't fair. This is a antitrust problem. You're not allowed to do that, and they got it backed off a little bit. But we know today that they came back and it's all right. There was a backup and restore center, which backed up files on computer and made some recovery possibilities. That was brand new in Vista, which was kind of something interesting. It replaced Outlook Express, Windows Mail. There was a new application called Windows Calendar. There was a Windows Photo Gallery, Windows DVD Maker, of course, the Media Center that you could have. So lots of changes and lots of stuff were kind of interesting in here. And this made this system unique with new future things. The most annoying thing of Windows Vista would be, and that's what a lot of people, once again, told me, and I would turn it off actually, the user account control, the UAC. You guys remember every time you'd click something, a program, whatever, it always popped up. Well, you know, you really want to run this to make sure that it's secure, blah, blah, blah. And it was constantly popping up on everything you would want. And that drove so many people crazy. Why? Because a lot of the programs people used were programs that were not designed to be used in the user account control standard of Vista. So what happened is that I would just turn off UAC. I'd turn it off for everybody because they would just go crazy with always having to say yes every time they'd start an app. That was going crazy. In terms of security, as usual, the user account control, which was a visible change, was there to try to protect you by changing the privileges of programs and limiting possibly how malware can actually get in there. But the trigger was just too crazy, and people just didn't like it at all. So that's my take on it. The installation, of course, was via DVD-ROM. First system to come on a DVD rather than a CD-ROM. Windows XP actually came on CD. It was the first system that can only be installed on a NTFS system. Windows XP before that, and all the other Windows. So Windows 9X were all FAT32 systems. Windows XP was the first to implement really NTFS file system. And it could install on an NTFS system or on a FAT32 system. It would install on both. Vista is the first one to actually require NTFS file system to work. It's the first that actually starts dabbling with something that's been a little controversy this year, the Trusted Platform Module. Windows Vista is the first system that can actually interact with a TPM chip. At the time, there were mostly chips on board on some systems. So that is kind of interesting. Service Pack 1 and 2 came, and they fixed a lot of little things. They tweaked a lot of the way that Vista worked and made it better, actually. People running Vista on Service Pack 2 probably found it to run well in general. But once again, the problem of having minimum requirement was probably the biggest issue of all the Windows systems at that time. And of course, the user account control pop-ups all the time was crazy. What score do I give to Vista? I'll give it a score of 7 because it's not that bad. And it is not loved for many reasons that are not Vista problem related, more user buying cheap PCs related, because it was very stable in general. And if you had a decent PC with enough RAM, it kind of ran okay. But it was not my favorite system, I have to say. But it was a change. Aero glass effects were kind of nice. And some new technologies came out of it, which were going to be projected into the future, into Windows 7. So what's your memory of Vista? Is it good? Is it bad? Share your personal comments. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up. Thank you for watching.